Especially, again, sun boosted by Koraidon on the field.
Yeah, that spicy extract's really nice into some of the special attackers, for example, Miraidon, because you don't have to worry about boosting up its attack. But Pokemon trainers, let's get into it. As Scavillain is on the field, paired up with that Koraidon. It does have the chlorophyll ability, so its speed will be doubled now the sun is in the sky. But Alberto has led out defensively with this Miraidon and the Grimmsnarl.
Grimmsnarl on the field trying to mitigate damage, but it's very difficult for Reflect to keep up with Spicy Extract on the other side. One of those things is moving faster than the other. That said, Miraidon pretty well positioned here. Threatens a ton of damage against Koraidon. There's a little bit of a guessing game with the Terastallization here. If you can land a Dazzling Gleam into the Koraidon before it Terastallizes, that's a KO. If you can land an Electro Drift into the Koraidon after it Terastallizes, there's a good chance with this more offensive Miraidon that that's also a KO with no option to mitigate the damage on the other side. And so definitely a risky position for a Koraidon. A Koraidon that can just protect itself, learn what Miraidon's going for with choice specs on the other side. So wouldn't be surprised to see that be the option here in the first turn.
It's definitely a difficult decision for Alberto to go for here. You can see every second being utilized, but no terrestrialization at this point here. Protect just comes through from the Koraidon on the opposing side as Grimmsnarl sets up that Reflect, trying to mitigate some of the physical offensive damage that can come through from Michael's side. Spicy Extract does come through and connect with the Miraidon, so it's going to leave it a little bit more vulnerable now that its defense has dropped by 2 stages. A follow-up from the potential side would be devastating, so I like the way Miraidon's like, I'm getting out of there. Alberto Lara is also celebrating that, because not only do you get your Pokemon off the field, can reset that drop, you also break the Focus Sash on that Scavillain.
Right, a really strong turn. It would have been easy to go out on the offensive against Koraidon, but you know it's so likely to protect itself and learn what Miraidon is doing. And now, like you say, you dodge the Spicy Extract. Michael showing the advantage Spicy Extract has compared to something like Decorate, because you can use it while your partner is just protecting and waiting through the turn and get the defense drop on the other side. But Miraidon wants none of that. It's the Volt Switch damage. You can see how massive damage that is into a fairly frail Pokemon in the Scavillain on the other side, and then just goes out. But now there's a crucial decision for Alberto. You can see him taking his time, deciding whether to bring in the Calyrex or the Ogerpon. Eventually does opt for the Calyrex.
Yes, and you could see as well the speed interactions. You know, the Scavillain using that chlorophyll ability to be able to outspeed the Miraidon is something that Alberto has to bear in mind here. So I wonder if Alberto is going to maybe try and get the speeds reversed with a potential Trick Room here.
It's definitely a dangerous time to do it, because now Koraidon has protected itself for a turn with Chlorophyll. Scavillain can go first and put that Spicy Extract onto Koraidon and have it go out on the offense, which means it could be threatening a one-hit KO against the Calyrex on the other side. And so the Reflect is helping to mitigate that. It means that a Terastallization to water means the Collision Course shouldn't be a KO against Calyrex. So if you want to force a Trick Room, you can do it at a fairly high cost, and that might leave Michael really on the back foot. Koraidon would have lost 2 stages of defense if it takes a Spicy Extract. Scavillain already has Focus Sash broken, so maybe if you can get up Trick Room, you're really in the driving seat of this game. But Michael is free to reposition, maybe find a different pairing on the other side that's less vulnerable to the Glacial Lance, like the Chestnut with its Wide Guard.
Well, that timer has me on the edge of my seat there. Alberto taking every second to try and lock in that Trick Room. Terrestrialization does come out from the Koraidon now, so it's going to be dropping its typing and becoming a Fire type. This is really great in the face of a potential Glacial Lance. Grimmsnarl is able to go straight for the Thunder Wave here, so it is going to slow down the Koraidon and maybe even stop it from moving entirely, so that Alberto isn't going to have to take any potential damage. The Spicy Extract does come through. It does connect into that Koraidon, so the attack is at +2. Yes, of course, you have those defenses, but the Clear Amulet is going to be able to come in clutch. The Paralysis, though, for Alberto is coming in clutch as well, as Calyrex can capitalize on this and go for the Glacial Lance. That will deal with the Scavillain, but the Terrestrialization is a really nice defensive play on for Koraidon to keep it in the game.
A very fortunate turn for Alberto there to get the fully Paralysis on the Koraidon that would have been doing so much damage. The Clear Amulet helping to keep the Koraidon fairly safe, along with the Terastallization. That means it's making resisted damage from Glacial Lance. Of course, the cost to having Leech Seed on Calyrex instead of the high horsepower is that Calyrex cannot threaten the KO into Koraidon, but maybe is comfortable just going for Glacial Lances here with now Miraidon on the field. But the damage potential is still massive. You now have Miraidon up on the other side. This Koraidon at +2 attack out on the other side. Grimmsnarl can only do so much, and you may not be able to count on repeated fully Paralysis. You also can't Thunder Wave the Miraidon because its electric typing gives it an immunity to it, so you can't hope for the mitigation there. It makes it harder to go for the Terastallization on Calyrex now too, because you can't turn into a water type with Miraidon there on the other side.
Yeah, so many options here for Michael to kind of pin down against Alberto. The Volt Switch are just going to go straight into the Protector of the Calyrex. And Alberto, I think, trying to maybe scout out what the opposing Miraidon wanted to lock into as well. It is running that Choice Scarf, so it is going to be a faster Miraidon on the opposing side. Grimmsnarl able to just go straight for the Spirit Break. You know that the Miraidon cannot go for any Trestalization, so you can deal this strong, super effective damage and lower its special attack, but you still need to find a way to deal with this Koraidon if it's able to break through the paralysis.
Still a really strong turn of damage. It was easy to see that double up of the electric offense and fire offense going into Calyrex because it gave Calyrex, other than protecting itself, no way to get through that turn. But then it is easy to just protect and get very solid damage onto Miraidon that also mitigates the damage coming out. Maybe you're a little more comfortable turning into a water type now with your own Calyrex because with the maybe possibly light screen going up, with the Spirit Break and the Scarf not specs, you'll take a lot less damage from this Volt Switch than we normally see.
And that's exactly what Alberto's doing here, going for that light screen to neutralize the opposing Miraidon. But it's actually just going to get off the field, take a leaf out of Alberto's book from earlier, going for that Volt Switch. So now it's going to be in the back. That was some decent damage into the opposing Calyrex here, though. Even though Alberto has tried to set this up defensively, that's still a big chunk of damage, and Clefairy can now come onto the field. Koraidon still unable to move, though. That is unfortunate for Michael, but at least you're able to bring in this Clefairy for later. Glacial Lance will come through and connect. Significant amount of damage onto that Clefairy. That's over 50% damage.
All right, the KO onto the Scovillain earlier, helping to amplify the damage. Clefairy and Koraidon looking fairly low here. Those fully paralysis are doing so much work for Alberto, dodging 2 turns of the +2 attack damage from Koraidon. That doesn't mean Michael's out of it yet, though. Has built fairly good damage onto this side of the field as well, but another fully paralysis really makes it difficult.
Yeah, that is 3 in a row here for the Koraidon. Grimmsnarl can follow up with a Spirit Break here into the Clefairy just to give it that little bit of chip and lower its special attack here. But I think that's really all Grimmsnarl can do at this point in time. The Glacial Lance is going to come through. This is a beautiful way to get a Nulla chilling Nay boost up from KOing the Clefairy. Not quite enough to be able to KO the Koraidon, but if Alberto keeps having this luck with paralysis, you're going to be able to clean it up in the next game. But for Michael, it'd be great to be able to see it break through.
Michael really needs to get attack off with Koraidon at some point. But the other big problem now is that with its speed mitigated from the Thunder Wave, it hasn't been enough for Calyrex to move before the Koraidon, but it will be definitely enough for Alberto's other Pokemon to move before it. And with Michael now not having any more switch options, only these 2 low health Pokemon on the field, something like Miraidon coming out and just clicking Dazzling Gleam is likely enough to just end the game. If Michael can even accomplish what seems like the large task now of getting through these 2 Pokemon that are out on the field.
Well, I think that's a great observation because the Miraidon from Alberto, we saw it out there in the leads, but then it's been nice and safely tucked away in the back and able to kind of go for damage here, but can come in later on. The Electro Drift will come through from the Miraidon on Michael's side. This goes straight down into the opposing Grimmsnarl, but again, that light screen really paying off. It is another paralysis for the Koraidon, though, absolutely devastating for it here as the Spirit Break will come through and get the knockout on the Miraidon. So, fantastic play here, dealing with that Miraidon that I think was really the only offensive Pokemon ready at the moment because Koraidon's just unable to break through and Calyrex can follow up and get the KO, meaning that this game 1 is going to be able to go to Alberto Lara.
Sometimes the games just go like that.
It's Pokemon, right?
It's part of the reason and value that Grimmsnarl provides to a team. You do it for the strong speed control that Thunder Wave offers, and then there's just a chance, turn after turn, that your opponent misses attacks from their most valuable Pokemon and has no real chance to fight in this game. With a team that's based around using that Koraidon, getting the Spicy Extract boost on it and doing so much damage, with that Koraidon never attacking, Michael didn't really get to play out his strategy. Now the good news out of that is that means Game 2 and Game 3 can just go the other way. It's not not a dominant Game 1 victory that signals that Michael has no fighting chance in the rest of this match. It's just down to how the Thunder Waves played out in that game.
And I think that's a great point here because the Scovillain and Koraidon synergy I thought was really interesting, particularly with that clear amulet, meaning that the defense drop didn't come through. And even though the paralysis kept coming through, it was not safe for Alberto here. Koraidon was still able to sit on the field. You can see it being the last Pokemon here in this game. And if at any point it was able to break through, that +2 attack was going to be devastating and could possibly even have just got a solid KO onto one of Alberto's Pokemon.
Right, it was constantly threatening massive damage or KOs. I think outside of the fully paralysis, Alberto still made a lot of smart plays, getting the damage down onto Miraidon, really not falling too much trap to going after the Koraidon too quickly was very important, especially with the Koraidon then not being able to follow up on it. I wonder if Michael is going to react to the Thunder Wave by trying harder to avoid it. if you can never end up paralyzed in the first place, then you don't have to worry about those fully paralysis. Things like Follow Me from NDD and Clefairy can help. Psychic Terrain can block Thunderwave coming out because it is a priority move as well, and so you can just try to never let it happen, and that's something you have to be thinking about from turn 0, as once again we see Crydon on one side, Grimmsnarl on the other. Yeah,
I think that's a great observation, and something for Alberto to be cognizant of, that NDD could indeed be in the back. It's not in the leads though, it's the same here for Michael with that Scavillain and the Crydon, whereas Miraidon and Grimmsnarl front and center for Alberto.
I wonder how both players will adjust compared to the turn 1 of game 1. It was a turn 1 that was definitely in Alberto's favor.
Yes.
Getting the Volt switch down while just undoing the Spicy Extract, getting the Reflect up at no cost at all. But if you're Michael, if you want to play a little bit more aggressively, not just let that play happen, it means exposing Crydon to that 50-50 of will it or won't it Terastallize that we talked about before game 1. If you're not going to play so passively, and you expect there's some risk that Alberto is not going to just repeat the same play and go after Scavillain, you really have to think about how safe Crydon is on the field. But maybe you can get away with it. Maybe it just is an attack into Scavillain again, and Crydon is free to do whatever it like this turn.
I mean, it's got to be tempting for the Scavillain to just go for a Spicy Extract, even maybe into the Crydon and get it set up a little bit earlier here. We're going to see that Terastallation come through. It is going to be, once again, the Fire Terastallization onto the Crydon, so trying to put itself into a good position.
But this indicates no Protect. No one is going to Terastallize and Protect. This is damage coming out. Reflect up.
That's very true. It's a good adaptation from game 1 into game 2. The Spicy Extract does come through from Scavillain into this Crydon, so once again it's going to be a +2 attack. Clear Amulet stopping it from taking the detrimental drops here, and it goes straight away for this collision course. Finds its mark down onto the opposing Miraidon here, and that is with a critical hit, as Redemption from game 1 is able to get the one-hit KO onto that Miraidon.
Depending on how that Miraidon is trained, might not have needed the critical hit, or it might have just been recompense for game 1
I think
and all those fully paralysis, but it means a huge swing here for Michael. Takes the more risky play, but then ends up not being a risk at all because Miraidon goes down before it attacks. Gets a free KO on a Miraidon just in exchange for the Reflect that was inevitably going up on the other side anyway. Now Calyrex is the Pokemon on the back foot. Because Spicy Extract is not a one-time thing. You can just go after it again. And at +4, Calyrex is much less safe from a collision course. That Water Terastallization might not be able to protect you. Just getting Trick Room isn't as easily said and done as it was in the last game. And then the repeat play from game 1 was getting the T-Wave onto the Crydon instead of getting the Trick Room out. But we talked about there could be some risk. There's Psychic Terrain in the back. There's a Clefairy in the back with Crydon just protecting itself to threaten Follow Me in an attack on the next turn. So definitely a dangerous position for Alberto. One more massive KO and he'll be way too far behind in this game to come back.
There's definitely options where Michael can set up that Crydon for more success in this game too, but Alberto's going to match the Sparkles on the stage right now with a Terastallization of his own, and once again it's going to be on that Calyrex Ice Rider, becoming a water type. Does put it into a better position against something like the Crydon, but again, if Miraidon's in the back for later, that could be something that's going to be devastating. Scavillain says, I've done enough spicy throwing around for today. We're going to be bringing all the action to me now with this Rage Powder. As Grimmsnarl just goes straight for the light screen, just setting up against any special attacks, but it's the offensive ones you got to worry about. Collision Course comes through, it will connect down into this opposing Grimmsnarl. Again, a solid one-hit KO. That is revenge for the Thunder Wave that was dealt to it in that game 1.
This is what Crydon wanted to do in game 1. These massive attacks coming out. The Rage Powder, another way to avoid the Thunder Wave risk. Now, Alberto doesn't just Thunder Wave the Scavillain, does get the light screen up, which could be helpful with Miraidon in the back, but then doesn't get a Trick Room out of this turn, just gets a Glacial Lance into Scavillain and the Crydon. And like we mentioned in game 1, at cost to the Leech Seed version of Calyrex, it is much harder to pressure Fire-type Crydon here. The Glacial Lance, you can see how little that did to the Crydon on the other side. When you compare the damage coming out of the Crydon compared to the damage going into the Crydon, that is not a favorable back and forth for Alberto. And Farigiraf is not going to help solve that problem. It doesn't do that much either. It does have Foul Play, can threaten a bunch of damage in. The Rage Powder can try to mitigate that, maybe the Calyrex moving first, but for now, just a Spicy Extract. Even more attack on the Crydon.
Oh my goodness, this Crydon is ferocious right now, and that Collision Course is finding its mark right down into that opposing Farigiraf that's just joined the field for Alberto. It is able to hang on, however, on 25 hit points remaining as Calyrex can follow up with this Glacial Lance. Now, this is nice on the Scavillain, you're able to get the Chilling Nave boost, but again, this Fire Terastallization really paying off for the Crydon. It's able to keep itself in the game.
Such a crucial survive for the Farigiraf. Manages to get this Trick Room up and not go down. You saw Michael taking the full power swing to get to the +4 stages of attack boost and go for the Collision Course. But then when that KO is missed, now it means the Crydon is quite vulnerable to a Foul Play, but Clefairy. When you need an ally, Clefairy comes out. It can redirect Foul Play in. We see the the Glacial Lance is just not amounting to enough damage on Koraidon. That should mean that Follow Me gives the Koraidon at least one more chance to attack. And when those attacks are so huge coming out of Koraidon, one more attack is such a huge cost for Alberto to have to pay in this game. You know, if it was something like just the Ndidi coming out, or the Miraidon especially coming out in this position, would have looked so much worse for Michael. The After You also an option to just get the quick damage out.
This is a really nice way to bypass that Trick Room. It really is a friend indeed with this Clefairy. So the Collision Course can now find its mark down onto that Frigoraph and is able to get the knockout. You don't have to worry about a potential foul play coming your way and causing a lot of disruption. Of course, Calyrex can just go straight away for the Glacial Lance. This will be good damage onto both the opposing Pokemon, but not nearly enough to be able to get a knockout on either side. Once again, Clefairy with the Koraidon, such great synergy, and I really like the way that Michael's team is designed to support this Koraidon at every turn of the event.
I'm not sure this is quite over yet. If Koraidon cannot one-hit KO Calyrex, a Glacial Lance will come back and KO both Pokemon. If the Pokemon in the back is the Miraidon Hoarding Choice Scarf that can't protect itself, and the Calyrex is then at 3 stages of attack boost, it will just KO the Miraidon. And so if Koraidon can't get it done in one turn, I'm not sure it'll have 2 swings to go for it. So this could be a very crucial moment still. There's still several turns of Trick Room left with no Protect in the back. There's probably not the option to Protect through all those turns of Trick Room, but the first Protect coming out now.
Yep, Clefairy just going for the defensive Protect here. Wouldn't be surprised to see this be followed up. But the Calyrex actually calling it here as well, going for the Protect and burning through this opportunity that Michael had to play defensively. But no, Koraidon actually not going for the Protect, so it has the utility to go for that into the following turn. This was a really nice play, I think, by Michael, just keeping that Protect in safe.
Gets the Sun expired as well. That still mitigates damage coming out from the Koraidon. Makes it a little bit more likely that even with the 4 stages of attack boost, Calyrex is able to hang on with a turn. Life Dew though, Life Dew going to try to recover health on the Koraidon. So rather than going for the After You to make sure they can attack quickly, instead he'll be able to take a Glacial Lance and get 2 attacks off, maybe down the stretch if you can get out of the Trick Room.
Yep, Calyrex is going to be able to get the damage on, but not able to get the KO. Now will this +4 Collision Course be able to get the one-hit KO onto this opposing Calyrex? It does not. The Sun going away being detrimental, and the fact that Calyrex was left unchecked throughout the most of this battle left it at such healthy HP, it just became very difficult for Koraidon to deal with.
Life Do such a smart play though, because if it had been immediately after you an attack last turn, then Michael would have probably lost. But now, Clefairy hangs on, Koraidon hangs on, After You comes out, Collision Course comes out.
Yep, no defensive play from Alberto here, just accepting the Collision Course coming through and evening out the score. Michael Zhang versus Alberto Lara is going to be 1 game apiece. I love a Game 3 at the best of times, but on the international stage, it's even more exciting.
Wow, that's there's so much damage coming out from both sides. Every turn feels like a massive risk. It felt like through most of that, Michael was threading the needle and finding ways to get offense out, but how repeatable will it be? And of course, that happened without the Thunder Waves that we saw in Game 1.
And I think it was great to be able to see these Collision Courses doing exactly what Michael had hoped they'd been able to do in Game 1, despite the paralysis, was getting very, very solid KOs here. The Terrestrialization, I think, on both sides was very interestingly played as well. You're able to mitigate the damage from these Glacial Lances, keeping Koraidon in the game. But the superstar for me were the partner Pokemons, the Scavillain going for these spicy extracts. You then have the Clefairy going for the Life Dew or the After You to be able to really give this Koraidon a moment to shine. And all these supportive Pokemon that Alberto was trying to bring in with the Grimmsnarl and the Frigoraph, Koraidon was just able to steamroll through.
Right, but it really did rely on the redirection from its partner Pokemon, the Follow Me and the Rage Powder, the Spicy Extract, and the Life Dew and After You. These are the moves that are letting Koraidon avoid the threats like Foul Play that were on the other side, avoid the problem of Trick Room and losing the speed advantage. It's a team that puts so many eggs in that one basket. You can see how badly it goes in Game 1, where those eggs start breaking, but when they're just firing off, it can work so well.
The high-risk, high-reward strategy does certainly pay off, but we're going to see a little shake of events here from Michael's side. It's going to be the Chestnut paired up with the Miraidon this time. On the opposing side for Alberto, though, sticking it with the Miraidon and the Grimmsnarl.
The same leads for Alberto, leads that give a lot of flexibility, right? You can go for either screen and then just Volt Switch out to whatever Pokemon you want. But the bigger change from Michael on the other side now has Chestnut on the field for the first time in this match. A Pokemon that would love to be able to wide guard against the Calyrex on the other side. Of course, as a grass type's immune to Leech Seed, so Pokemon can really mitigate everything coming out of Calyrex. But for now, it's not Calyrex that it's up against, it's Miraidon, and Miraidon that's threatening quite a bit of damage. You have to worry about Draco Meteor coming into Chestnut. You have to worry about Dazzling Gleam coming into both if it's not a wide guard on the other side. For now, just Light Screen going up though.
Yeah, makes sense for the light screen just to come through here as the Draco Meteor connects from one Miraidon into the other. Despite the light screen, that is a solid one-hit KO of damage. The Choice Scarf on the Miraidon on Michael's side, giving it that speedy advantage, able to get the knockout. You can say Alberto is a little bit like, oh, kind of didn't want to see that come through, as Chestnut can follow up with the body press.
Alberto opted into that risk, right? A lot of players in the situation of Miraidon versus Miraidon, you see both Fairy Terastallizations immediately just come out because you can't afford to take a Draco on the other side. But this time, neither player goes for the Draco Meteor. Michael doesn't have to go for it, or goes for the Fairy Terastallization. Michael doesn't have to go for it. He's got the Choice Scarf. Knows his Miraidon is moving first. Yeah. But Alberto maybe hoping that the Light Scream is enough to take the damage, or maybe hoping that Michael wouldn't just lock himself into Draco Meteor with a possibility for 2 Fairies on the other side, but pays a really high cost for it. Draco Meteor successfully lands into Miraidon and just takes the quick lead for Michael, while he gets even extra damage with the body press into Grimmsnarl.
I mean, this is what we were literally just saying, right, about high risk, high reward, and that was the strategy Michael went for in this turn 1. Miraidon obviously sticking with the Draco Meteor is able to do a little bit of damage into the opposing Ogerpon, but of course the special attack is going to continue to be dropped on its side of the field. Ogerpon can retaliate though into the Chestnut. It's not enough to get the knockout, however, despite this critical hit coming through, so Chestnut can go for the body press and show Alberto how it's done with the knockout, getting the second one very early doors in this game 3.
A quick 2-0 lead for Michael. Now it's all on the back of Calyrex and Ogerpon to carry this game. Now there's some good signs for Alberto. The -4 special attack on Miraidon on the other side means it's really not threatening very much damage. Chestnut is vulnerable to an Ivy Cudgel, so it's an easy situation to get a Trick Room up if Alberto would like it. And maybe then Michael's quite vulnerable to that. Clefairy's probably in the back somewhere. It's good insurance against Trick Room. It means you can get something off with after you. But Calyrex is still fully healthy and no Terastallization spent. Because Alberto didn't go for that Fairy Terastallization on turn 1, it means the Calyrex can still use Water Terastallization as a possibility in the end game. So Michael's going to have to keep the right pieces around and make sure he can actually land the KO with Calyrex. So a big lead, but possibly not an insurmountable one if Alberto can get a Trick Room up and then start going out on the offense. Has to deal with the Chestnut though. The wide guard is a big problem for Calyrex, and that's why it's so valuable to have gotten the 95% damage onto it in that last turn.
And I like the switch here from Michael. As you were saying, you might need it to stick around and be safe. There is going to be the Water Terastallization on the Calyrex, but at the same time, all those Draco drops were really mitigating the damage it had on the field. So let's bring in the Koraidon. We know how well it can do in this particular matchup to try and get some damage out on the board. But Chestnut just going nice defensively here for this wide guard, stopping a potential Glacial Lance coming through and dealing damage to the Koraidon before it's able to terrestrialize. You can see the Ivy Cudgel not doing very effective damage, but still giving it a little bit of chip, as Calyrex does indeed set up that Trick Room. So now the speed advantage is going to be on Alberto's side.
Michael makes a good play there to get Koraidon out on the field and knows it's completely safe to bring Koraidon in there because Chestnut is wide guard. Yeah. But because the Ogerpon goes for Ivy Cudgel into Koraidon, you haven't taken away the option for wide guard again on this turn. Means that Koraidon can once again be safe to go out on the offense and get a big swing into one of these Pokemon. A KO into Ogerpon really then limits Alberto's options in the future, makes Chestnut maybe impossible to kill. You're going to have to get an Ivy Cudgel into it right now to not just be wide guard blocked throughout the rest of this game. And so I think Michael threads the needle to get the right set of Pokemon on the field that even in this Trick Room should be able to accomplish something on this turn if he wants. And that's what you can see Alberto thinking about Protect, knowing that despite the Trick Room, doesn't have the completely advantageous position here.
And I think if you're Alberto, you need to get rid of this opposing Chestnut so that you can actually do something with your Calyrex here. The Terastallization comes through on the Koraidon here, so once again going to be dropping its Fighting and Dragon typing and becoming a Fire type in the face of the potential Glacial Lancers. But Calyrex just going for a Swift Protect here as White Guard comes through in case it had decided that it wanted to go on the offensive in this particular turn. Really nice, again, supportive play for this Koraidon as Ogerpon decides to go for the Ivy Cudgel. That's a really nice, clean way to deal with that opposing Chestnut, leaving the Koraidon a bit more vulnerable possibly in the next turn, depending on who that fourth and final Pokemon is going to be for Michael. If it's something like the Clefairy, then we could see a little bit of a run back from the game 2. Flare Blitz, however, not falling for the Protect on the Calyrex, is able to deal with the Ogerpon. So now it actually only is the Calyrex and Alberto's side left.
With no Ogerpon left, this should be checkmate if that last Pokemon is Clefairy. Now, if it's something else, maybe Alberto still has a way back, but Alberto paying a high cost for going down quickly here means he's down 1-3. And so what can happen here is that you can have a Follow Me, an After You and a Flare Blitz. Calyrex can survive that move. It can go and turn into a water type to be able to take a Flare Blitz, but that just means an After You and an Electro Drift are coming in soon afterwards. And so the combination of fire and electric offense really puts Calyrex in a difficult spot. You can see Alberto considering Leech Seed, trying to consider ways to maybe not let Miraidon on the field, try to find some path through this. But the Clefairy really, again, in this trick room, providing the necessary insurance to make sure that you can still get your attacks off despite not having the speed advantage with your restricted Pokemon.
I think you make a great point that you have to start thinking about the end game here, because this water terrestrialization is really nice in the face of something like that Koraidon, but then you have to contend with the Miraidon that we know is nice and safe in the back for Michael. Clefairy just going to go straight for a Protect him, maybe wants to stick around and help Koraidon out in the future turns here, as the Calyrex just goes for this Leech Seed, but is not going to be able to connect it thanks to this nice defensive play by the little Clefairy, leaving the field open for the Koraidon to go for the Flare Blitz. It's going to utilize the power of the Sun, and even though you have this terrestrialization on Calyrex's side that, as you can see, is really, really paying off, you're still chipping away at it, you're still giving a little bit of damage, making it easier for either the Koraidon or the Miraidon in the back to clean up later on.
Right, you've paid the incredibly high cost of turning Calyrex into a Pokemon weak to the electric offense that it will eventually come from the Miraidon on the other side. And we mentioned it before, that the cost of not having the Leech Seed is there is no ground offense to threaten this Koraidon. That means that it didn't have to be Follow Me or After You alongside Koraidon. Clefairy could just protect itself and know that Koraidon was not actually threatened by a Glacial Lance in that position.
And honestly, with this Life Dew in play as well, I feel like the Calyrex is a difficult way of even getting through the opposing Koraidon. With the Glacial Lances, you're really only able to utilize this Leech Seed to be able to get that critical recovery and keep chipping away. Collision Course is going to come through, however, into this Calyrex, takes it down into the orange zone. So again, just damage after damage stacking into this Calyrex, making it very difficult for Alberto to come back in this set.
Right, because Life Dew will out-heal the damage from Leech Seed onto Clefairy and Koraidon. And so Calyrex cannot just protect itself and try to heal that way, because the other side will heal as well. You're not making any forward progress, and you're just burning through turns of Trick Room. That means Miraidon doesn't need support. When it comes out on the field, it will just instantly have the offense. But now, Miraidon switching in. Maybe a little bit of impatience from Michael. If a Glacial Lance were to come out right now, things might swing the other way.
Yeah, this could be very, very risky for the Miraidon joining the field here. You do have Frengard from the Clefairy in play, but Calyrex not going for the Glacial Lance, does just decide to go for this Protect here and maybe try and get some of the HP recovery from the Leech Seeds that it was trying to put down. The Life Dew comes through. This helps out the Clefairy, give it that little bit of chip that Leech Seed was able to steal from it earlier on, but of course Miraidon in a great spot. The Sun has left the field now, so Koraidon can always set that up a little bit later on, but I think critically Miraidon being able to come back in safely, set that Electric Terrain up once again, does just put it in such a dominant position for this next turn.
Right. Well, but biggest problem now, Trick Room is gone. Miraidon is on the field. Electric Terrain is up. Calyrex protected last turn and is a water type. Electro Drift, it's a multiplier on the super effective damage, is more than enough to pick up a KO here and give Michael the match.
Yeah, you can see the handshake from the players there already. Alberto knew that endgame was tough, and Michael was able to capitalize on it. After such a devastating game one, to keep your composure and your resolve and your faith in your team throughout the rest of that set, I think is just an excellent display of sportsmanship and incredible Pokemon play.
Yeah, I like your mention of composure, because it can be very difficult to see that your game one go down.